another River Landing conversation. We've got a little bit of a different angle today, or twist, or whatever. You'll see we've got somebody new sitting across from me, Rod Winther, a resident here and world-renowned musician.
Moving right along.
Good fellow. And in the guest chair, Kay Heflin. Kay has, as you know, been a brilliant co-host of this session for the last couple of semesters. And somewhere along the way, we had a number of requests for people, I don't know why, but wanting to know about Kay and me. So we have chosen to wrap up this semester of broadcasts with a conversation today with Kay and next time with me. And Rod has very kindly agreed to come and serve as the co-host for both. So it's either going to be a terrific success. It is going to be a terrific success. I won't get into my Druer Irish pessimism or something like that. So welcome to this week's River Landing conversation with Kay Heflin. Kay, welcome. It is lovely.
Thank you. It's very strange to be here.
Yes, the angle is a little very different.
Yeah.
And Rod, thank you for
my pleasure.
Agreeing to step in. Kay, this is so bizarre to be said. Well, tell us where you're from and where you grew up.
All right.
What stands out for you about your growing up years?
I was born in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, in my dad's hometown. My mom and dad had moved there when they married after the war was over and stayed there until I was around 6 months old. And then they moved back to my mom's hometown where they had met during the war. And it's a little bitty town out in southwest Texas called El Dorado, the only town in the whole county, ranching and oil. Wow. Population of anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000, depending on whether or not the oil was booming at the time.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, you and I have talked about El Dorado for many years, and I'm always fascinated by your stories about what it was like to grow up in a small school and the friends you have.
Some of my experiences growing up are probably very different from most of the residents here at River Landing. For example, I learned to swim in cattle tank because we didn't have swimming pools when I was young, not until like the 4th or 5th grade. I started driving on a friend's ranch when we were about 10. Her dad would put a feed sack in the driver's seat so we could see. It was an old pickup. It had a stick shift, a starter, and a choke. And he'd send us out and say, watch for the rocks and don't hit the cows. And so that was how we started driving out there. And in Texas at that time, we had our real driver's license when we were 14. When my kids were growing up, that just scared the bejesus out of me that they could drive at that point in time. But I have a bond of friendship from girls that not only did I go to school with, but some of us have known each other since we were like 1 year old. We truly grew up together. And now there are about 10 of us who still get together once a year out at a friend's lodge. And we reunite as though nothing has happened over the years. And it's just been delightful that we've been able to continue that.
You're very lucky.
We are very lucky, yes.
Wow. And what about after school?
After school, I went to the University of North Texas, what was then North Texas State University, and was originally a music major in piano. And after about 2 months of that, I realized there was a lot of life outside the music building, and that being a music major was really my mom's dream, not mine. And so I got up the gumption to tell him one Sunday night on our weekly phone call that I wasn't doing that anymore. So I went through the rest of my freshman year and sophomore year just kind of as an undeclared major. Summers after my freshman and sophomore year, I worked at a camp that the Lions Club had for children with disabilities, and thought I would like to go into deaf education. That meant I was going to need to transfer to the University of Texas. So I had all my paperwork had been approved, dorm reservation, everything was there at the end of my sophomore year. And at a party, I happened to be talking to a friend, and she said, why don't you go into speech pathology and you can stay here? I'd never heard of this field before. So she said, go talk to Dr. Jaco. So I went and talked to Dr. Jaco, and lo and behold, I became a speech path major without really knowing what I was doing. But it was the perfect fit for the rest of my life.
How
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding the fact that, and Rod, I'm sure knows this, we haven't talked about this before, that at the time, North Texas State had probably the best jazz program in jazz majors.
Still do.
Yes.
Yes.
But
The 1 o'clock band.
Yes, the 1 o'clock band has won Grammys. You'll see their musicians all over, especially the night shows and stuff like that have their little combos, yeah.
Very well.
think of the gift to speech path, though, that you gave.
Yes, so I did 1 semester of graduate school there at North Texas. And then Neil and I had been dating for like 5 years. I had been going to school fall, spring, summer, trying to make up for the times when I didn't have my major decided. And I was just tired of school. And so we got married after I did 1 semester of graduate school. And then I finished my master's at the University of Tulsa.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I know that you're a huge fan of Tennessee,
Yes,
and there's some UT in there
Yeah.
too.
they're both UTs, and they're both
that's
orange.
true. That's true. And Green Bay.
Yes.
Can you just give us a brief description of how that?
I love sports. One thing about growing up in a small town is everything centers around either church or the school. And my dad had played football in high school. My grandfather had played football at the University of Missouri. My uncle played at Texas Tech. So football was just a part of our family forever. And I was probably in the stands when I was a year old. So the love of the game came early on. Green Bay comes from my dad because he was in Wisconsin. And if he hadn't had to drop out of high school and World War II hadn't come along, his dream was to play for the Packers.
Wow.
So
Good dream.
there's that. And then Tennessee, because our son went to the University of Tennessee and fell in love with that school when he was about 8, and we were living in Atlanta. And so I decided that I would be a Tennessee fan with him, and did that. And then I found Pat Summitt and the Lady Vols basketball and fell in love with them. So that's where Tennessee
natural
comes
fit.
from, yeah.
And you look good in orange.
Thank you. Used to better when I had orange hair, but
Tell us a bit about your life and your work in speech pathology and where that went on.
when I finished graduate school at the University of Tulsa, I worked at the Children's Medical Center in Tulsa for about 1.5 years. And then Neil was transferred to Georgia Pacific headquarters, which was in Portland, Oregon at the time. While I was there, I got to work on a national grant through the University of Oregon Health Sciences Center, working with children with severe disabilities. Institutions for these children were really big at that point in time. And so we had teams trying to develop situations in the community and a way to deliver therapy to these kids that they hadn't been able to receive before. So that was really one of my very favorite jobs. I learned a lot. I worked closely with OTs and PTs and nursing, and it was a very good learning experience. After that, I worked primarily in the schools. I taught a preschool for developmentally disabled children for a couple of years. And then after that, I stopped. I sold real estate for a couple of years, and then I had the kids. Was out for 4 years, and then went back to school earlier than I expected when a friend called and said, "Kay, I have a job you need to do." And so I went back to work and worked ever since. Now, the last 15 years of my career were also some of my favorites. I kind of switched gears a little bit to a field called assistive technology, which started when we started using augmentative communication for people who can't speak or cannot speak clearly enough. If you think in terms of Stephen Hawking, which would probably be the person that most people would be familiar with, and the digitized communication device that he was able to use, that's a very high-end device. But we started opening up doors to kids and teenagers, all ages in the school district, who were able to do things that they hadn't been able to do before because of development in technology. Wow. What we know as word prediction that you get now when you're typing, and words will come up. We started using that back in the early 90s for our children who had physical disabilities, so they didn't have to type as many letters, saving time and energy to produce that. We had text-to-speech for our kids with learning disabilities who couldn't read but could certainly understand and comprehend information. So that was what I did for the last 15 years. Wow. Kept us on our toes. I coordinated a team of about 12 people, OTs, speech.
In a school district?
In the school district.
In public schools?
This is in Cobb County Schools, a suburb of Atlanta. We had over 100,000 students in the district. It was fairly large.
Big district.
Yes. Yep.
You know, it's interesting. We've known each other for a long time.
We have.
And we have shared stories about our lives, but I've never heard you really talk about this part of your life like this. I'm loving this.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yes. So we know you lived in Oregon, and then you moved to Atlanta. How was Oregon? Did you miss it? Do you miss it?
I do miss it. It's just a gorgeous place to live, and we had great friends there. We were there for 13 years. And after we got to Atlanta, Neil said he wasn't going to let me go back because he's afraid I would never come home and I would leave him in Atlanta with the kids. So anyway, yeah, it was just a real different way of life. Interestingly enough, when we first got there, I had a bit of claustrophobia, having grown up in West Texas. Open, we could see the horizon, 360 degrees, sunrise, sunset, all of that. And got to Oregon, and here were mountains and trees everywhere I looked. But grew to love the mountains and trees, and we learned to ski, at least to a decent ability, so that we could enjoy that sport, and went hiking and rafting. And
what was your favorite activity? And was it skiing?
I really liked skiing. I liked going up on that lift where you could see the whole world around you. And been going back to the lodge and having a good drink. Yeah, it was all fun.
The perfect day.
Yeah.
When you were there, I was thinking about, I've lived, as you know, in Maine, the other side of the country, and one of the issues that was present in Maine, if you were there long enough, was being from, as they used to say, away, being an outsider. Was that present in Oregon?
No, not at all.
Much?
Although there got to be a time, I believe it was when Tom McCall was governor, when we had interesting signs coming into the state. I can't remember the exact wording, but it was like, you're welcome to visit, but don't stay too long.
Yeah.
And that was mainly on the California border.
Yeah.
Don't Californicate our Oregon.
Probably is what it said, but
I think so.
but very independent, free-thinking types of people.
So you finished up your professional life in Atlanta.
Yes.
And then what about from Atlanta to here?
Okay.
I know there were one or two jumps in there as well.
Neil and I both retired the last day of June in 2008. And the moving truck was at the house on July the 1st. And we loaded up and we came to Greensboro. In 2005, we'd purchased a lot in Carolina Trace. And so we came with the intent of starting to build there while we stayed in a one-bedroom apartment for about 6 months. Interesting after that many years of marriage. But we built our home there in Carolina Trace, and we were there for about 12 years, I guess, and absolutely loved our life there, developed many friendships, were very active in the club and the community and church, and obviously met a lot of friends there. We had good times, and I know
Who are here now.
yes, a lot of them are here, and so I know some of you say, "Oh, you're one of them," and yes, we are, but we have certainly tried and made every effort to make new friends along with the old friends that we have here.
Great.
I kind of sprang this on you earlier, and I'd like to revisit this question.
All right.
What one question would you ask yourself if you
I
were
told you
sitting?
there would be a long pause.
I know, that's if you were sitting in this chair.
I don't know. Not to sound braggadocious or anything, but I've had several comments from people who watch our show about being able to do this and to talk in public, which I'm very comfortable in doing. And I would say that goes back to a man by the name of Bill Bowen, who was our speech and drama coach in high school. I started debating when I was in 7th grade and debated through my senior year and did one-act plays and extemporaneous speaking and all of that. And wow, that's something that can just really carry with you throughout your life. And I wish my kids had done more of that.
I know from personal experience she's quite good at this, at debating. I've enjoyed that.
Neil might disagree.
So you came to River Landing, and as you know, one of our favorite questions to ask about River Landing is what has surprised you
Well,
here?
we moved in the midst of COVID. Everything was still locked down. So one of the surprises was that River Landing wasn't what we thought River Landing was going to be when we first got here. It was very different. But now that things are opened up, they talk about how easy it is to meet people here and how welcoming everybody is. And while you're expecting that, the extent of it is still amazing. Just the welcoming of everyone and the ease of relationships between the staff and the residents just makes it all a very pleasant experience.
And what kinds of things, aside from having Friday afternoon River Landing conversations, do you enjoy doing here?
Well, I started playing pickleball when we moved here and truly enjoyed that sport. I hadn't played tennis for many years because of knee problems, but got back to pickleball and we liked that a lot. And then play bridge frequently with the Tuesday group, and then we have a smaller group on Fridays. And then I started a what we call a marathon group with 10 couples. Some of us are for Carolina Trace, some of us are not. And we meet in each other's home, 2 couples at a time, and play bridge for fun, but also for points.
There is such a thing as bridge for fun.
Bridge for fun.
There would be those who would argue about that.
And then usually have dinner together, and it's been a nice way to get to know, for the Trace people to get to know people from other places and them to get to know us. So that's been fun. I think those are probably the 2. Oh, and then chimes. I'm sorry, I almost forgot. Play in the chimes, and now the Chimes Bell Choir, the ringers which has been a great experience. Lots of fun, way to keep in touch with music. Yeah.
And
Rod,
she's
you
the
could-
assistant conductor. Yeah.
You could heave a sigh of relief that she
I was going to
actually
say,
mentioned that.
I'm going to write it down. Do you enjoy conducting?
More than I thought I would. It's really the first time I've ever done it, except when we were rehearsing for a contest for band, and the director would need to go to the back of the auditorium or something. So, yeah, it's been
pop
fun.
up and do it?
Yeah.
That's good. That's really good.
And as we've kidded when we're not on the air, the question, about the few people in time
Yep.
that if the details are sorted out that you'd like to visit with and
Okay.
why.
My dad is my most favorite person in the world. His father died when he was fairly young, like a young man. And I know Daddy missed him a lot. And Dad also talked about his father and his father's brothers on Sunday afternoons. The family would get together after church and have a potluck dinner, and then they all played different instruments. And so they would, so I want to go back and do that with Daddy. And then I had a younger brother who died at the age of 27 from a sudden heart issue, who was a football coach. And I would like to go to a Packers game with Daddy again.
Neat.
That's really great. What was your dad's instrument? What did he?
Oh, my dad didn't play any instrument.
Oh, I thought he
No,
did.
no, it was his dad.
Oh, okay.
Dad couldn't even sing, but I think his dad played the drums in the group, and he talked about one uncle who played 5 or 6 different instruments. So anyway, it would have been a fun
Spoons or
group.
something,
Yeah.
And any other particular people you'd like to?
That's the main thing that came back to mind. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was just curious, you know, we've lived here now, what, three
About 3 years.
Yeah. And it seems to me that you have experienced kind of a wonderful growth here.
Oh,
You've really gotten involved. It's not like you weren't involved at Trace, but you really have gotten involved here. Can you tell us what has prompted that, or what has been the outcome of all that?
well, actually, I came here thinking I didn't want to get involved like that. We had done lots of things through the country club at Trace. I was on the vestry at our church. I chaired committees at the church. And I thought, now I'm going to really retire when I come to River Landing. And then you just meet certain people who tend to get you very involved in things and just kind of suck you in. And you know, it's easy. And I think part of it is that in some ways the things I've been involved here don't have the responsibilities that other things had. In other words, I'm on the council now, but we're not responsible for the budget of River Landing.
Right.
Like on the POA or the vestry at church, you were responsible for those types of things. So it's
Maybe
nice
you
to
can
give,
enjoy some of these things a
yeah,
little more.
yeah, still give back a little bit, but without all of the heavy lifting, so to speak.
Kay, as we sort of wind towards the end of this conversation, which has just been terrific, are there things we haven't, that you've thought about during the week, or assuming you've thought of anything during the week?
I've been busy during the week.
She's had her hands full with the.
That we haven't talked about, or that you would like to talk about that haven't come up yet?
I'll be real honest and say I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Wow.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank
And
you.
I
Thank
just-
you for
it's-
coming and sitting in my chair, Rod.
It's just great. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. This has just been such a treat. Great
Thank you.
idea. And whoever suggested this out there, thank you for doing that. Thank you, Rod, for coming.
My pleasure.
We will look forward to our final River Landing conversation next Friday afternoon. Good afternoon and have a good weekend.